Hello, and welcome to our episode of Support Small Business Saturday. I'm your host, Representative Chelsea Branham, and we are going to chat with some great village business owners today. And they're going to tell us how we can support their business and answer a few questions. So, Sean, Kathy, can you introduce yourselves and also the business that you run?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Cummings, and I own Vito's Ristorante. It's right at 7628 North May. And been in business now at Vito's for going on 17 years. How about you, Sean?
Okay, I'm Sean Cummings, and I have Sean Cummings Irish Pub near Vito's. And we've been open, I think, it's kind of a weird on and off deal, but for about 13 or 14 years at this point.
And just as an aside, please tell me that you're offering some of the delicious bacon offerings that you had previously.
You know, every once in a while I throw them in as a special. But weirdly enough, when I do, people just go, that's not Irish. And I go, okay. But other people wanted it. They're funny that way.
Well, I fully support it. So you just let me know when you're doing it and I will be there. All right, we're going to straight into the questions here. So we've been in a pretty interesting time for the last several months, certainly one that we didn't predict, and it's caused a lot of issues, not only for people's health and safety, but obviously for business as well. So what has been kind of the biggest hurdle that you've met in kind of this current atmosphere?
So shall I go first, honey? Well, honestly, I think the biggest hurdle for us at Vito's is, I want to keep everyone safe. Of course, I want to keep my customers safe and do everything I can and follow all the protocols. But I also want to keep my staff safe. My staff, they all have families. I have a couple of them that are immune compromised. And so I want to do everything I can to make them feel as safe, as comfortable, and to be as safe as possible. And I think one of the things that we've done is, every single person that works for us and walks in our door comes in with a mask on. We have hand sanitizer, like for our customers. We have distance all of our, a little bit more even, to make them feel comfortable. It is really difficult to, I think, turn people away because, we're only at 50% capacity. And so, when you turn business away, you're not making any money and our servers aren't making any money. But we have been able to kind of turn things around a little bit by offering our to-go service and curbside service. So that has helped tremendously. And especially, we have these huge windows right out in front of the restaurant. So when we take a to-go order, for example, we ask them what kind of car they drive. And then that way, we see them, we run it out, we have the gloves on, we have the mask on, and everyone feels totally safe that way, I believe. So anyway, we're doing everything we can. We're following all the protocols and just hope that it works.
Well, we certainly appreciate you taking the extra step and going the extra mile for staff and customers. Sean, what about you?
Okay, so at the Irish Pub, we do literally the same stuff that Kathy does. Everybody walks in, and we've been doing that since day one. I didn't wait until somebody said all the employees had to have masks. It was pretty logical that if somebody is breathing over your food as they're making it, it could be an issue, especially with COVID. So the biggest challenge, believe it or not, is just the concept itself. An Irish pub is supposed to be a cramped environment. Everybody's loud. Everybody sings along with music. Everybody claps their hands. Now, if you name all of the things you are not supposed to be doing, they are all on the list of things to do in an Irish pub. So we have changed the setting around. We were socially distancing, obviously, from day one. It's got a different feel to it. And, it's silly for somebody to lie about the reality of how people feel when they come into a place, because you don't really go to a restaurant for food. You think you do, but you go for atmosphere, whether you like the servers, whether you like the owners. How does the place make you feel? And if I've done a good job at an Irish pub, I have made you homesick. or missed something that your mother used to serve you when you were a kid. That's actually what we do. And that isn't conducive, honestly, to modern business the way it is right now during COVID. So we've adjusted, but people are a little freaked out when somebody comes up with a mask and a shield and gloves and everything and brings out a beer. You know, you can't just remove your mask and have a little hole in the middle and put a straw in it to drink a beer. I mean, and it's okay. We've adjusted. We've got plexiglass between who's ever playing that night and the customers, as well as a huge amount of space between them. But the biggest thing is what Kathy said. I could pack 60 people in that little space every night, but what we really do is about 22. And that is, and I always try to figure out a polite way to say it, but there isn't one. There's no way to make money when I have 5 employees serving 22 people a $6 beer. I mean, the math just does not work. So we did, while everybody was closed and we were doing curbside, we did casseroles and all this other stuff that was out of our normal realm. And now we still do to-go, but our food, in all honesty, is not as conducive to to-go food as Kathy's is. And so we've adjusted with that. I would love, literally, to put a pizza oven in there and do pizza, but I don't have any space. And in order to be able to, I wanted to do fish and chips outside in like a tent, you know, like you would do at a carnival or something. And that way a lot of people don't want to walk inside your place. And they want to get something that's fresh and delicious. And the best way to do that is to walk up to a counter and get it. And really and truly, if we could figure out a way for possibly the health department to allow something that's simple like that. I mean, I have all the wash stations and everything 20 feet away. But it's not the same for you to walk up to a tent and order something and my guy to run to the kitchen and say, will you make this? And then we bring it back out to you. There's nothing cool and fun about that that would help a business to survive. What would is if I can have my big old huge gigantic Asian fryer outside and you do everything in front of everybody and they can get it right there hot and they could eat outside and nobody really has to come inside the building whatsoever. I would say that's the biggest block is we haven't really done anything for people that are doing creative stuff to make them able to do the creative stuff. I hope that makes sense. I am the most out of the box thinker I have ever met. And I will come up with 30 solutions, but I also legally have to be able to do it. It isn't going to help me if the health department comes and shuts me down, even though it is totally and utterly healthy. So I'd throw that one back at you. I hope I answered that well enough without lecturing.
Yeah, Chelsea, you work on the health department thing for us?
You know, I was going to say, I think you're probably talking to the right person about these issues. So I will see what I can do. And I think you're right. We have not been as good at adapting to the innovation and creativity that we need to have. I spent a great deal of time towards the beginning of our initial closing down and distancing, just trying to get policy changed for, you know, businesses to be able to adapt to those things.
Right.
Example is a person that was doing mental health services, counseling services for individuals or families couldn't do that via telemedicine at that point. So we had to really work with companies to get that switched over. And, you know, we've done a little bit of that, but we can only do what we know about. And so I'm happy to hear those things from you all, and we'll certainly get started.
Well, if you don't mind, let me throw one more thing in there. It's not worth my while to buy a $40,000 food truck to sell fish and chips for the period of time we need to do it. And at the end of it, I'm stuck with a $40,000 food truck that I don't want. I mean, I don't want it. All I'm trying to do is keep the place open until we get back to some semblance of what the new normal is.
Right. Well, and also, you know, with the health department issue, you know, it would be more likely kind of similar to what they do at the carnivals or the, you know, the state fair. You know, it's enclosed in a tent. You have a little window, and you know, pass the food over. So, I mean, it could be something as simple as that. So, it might be worth checking into.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So let's move to the second question. This one is probably going to tie in a little bit of that as well. And I've just learned what my part is and how I can help. But what do you think businesses and the community can do to make sure that we kind of make it through this together? I know that there's been many businesses that have had to close their doors. Sean, likely because of what you're talking about, the math does not add up. Or, because they can't make it work with having all their staff there. So what can we do collectively to kind of eke through this situation?
Mm-hmm. I think one thing, our customers that are coming in, I do think it's a good idea to follow all those protocols as far as walking in with a mask. And we have a sign on our front door to have a mask when you walk in, and wait to be seated as well. And then you can take it off once you're seated, and which I think is fine. But and Sean and I both have masks available for customers who need them. And and actually we've had a couple of people call out from outside and say, "Hey, I forgot my mask," and then we'll run one out to them. And getting up, if they have to use the restroom, or for whatever reason, or as they're walking out, to put the mask on. But I think one of the challenges a lot of restaurants are facing is a staff shortage. So they might have someone who is possibly exposed to the virus. So they're off work until they get that test back. Well, unfortunately, some of these tests are taking 2 weeks. And although they say if you're quarantined for 2 weeks, you're probably safe. But in that 2 weeks, you're not only missing out on a paycheck, but your employer is missing out on help on their server or their cook or whatever. So I think maybe, if we could figure out some way to speed up this testing, I think that would really help businesses. Some restaurants, restaurateurs that I've talked to, they might have 3 or 4 people out waiting on tests, and they just can't afford to stay open because they don't want to give anybody bad service, or they're just short staffed. So I think testing, testing in a better way, in a faster way. I know we have the rapid test, but everyone says they're not 100% reliable. So it's kind of pointless to do something that doesn't work and come back to work and possibly infect people. And then you also have, people who won't tell you that they've been exposed, and they come to work and possibly expose not only other staff members, but customers, because they don't want to miss out on that paycheck, knowing they might have to be off work for 2 weeks. So I think that's really been a challenge for a lot of not only restaurant owners, but business owners in general.
Okay, here's the kind of my 2 cents on most of this. So in our business, we are in a strange business. We have had owners who have had employees test positive and made them come to work and expose other employees and customers. That will ruin all of us, every single one of us. But what is our recourse? We even know who did it. We have a specific page specifically for restaurant people. We know which places have people infected and everything else. There is no recourse. We had a place that did this, lied to the news. The news went and saw them, lied to them about whether they were going to close down or not, then didn't close. How is anyone supposed to trust going into any restaurant when these unscrupulous scumbags are doing things that are dangerous to all of society?
Right.
None of us can help anyone until we rid ourselves of these lowlifes. Literally. I mean, my day is spent going, how do I not get sued? How do I do this so I don't get sued? How do I do this so I don't get sued? How do I do this so I don't get sued? How do I protect my customers and still not have a future ex-employee not sue me?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are legitimate concerns. Kathy and I have a very well-educated clientele. They know whether we're doing things right or not. A lot of other places don't. I can't tell you how many places I go into and they've got their nostril right here, but their nose is exposed. Not only are people not wearing gloves in the kitchen at this point, they're also not washing their hands. I mean, it's whether we like it or not in the restaurant business, we are one gigantic family with the weird uncle and the great people on the other side. And I don't know if there is any guidance at the Oklahoma Restaurant Association, or once again, I go back to the health department because they are the lead on all of this. How do we put forth something that makes it okay if we are suspect that we can send somebody home? Obviously legally, you're probably not going to be able to get anything through to do that. But I think that's a legitimate concern, is the blowback on us for doing the right thing.
Well, can I say one thing real quick?
Sure.
I also think there needs to be some kind of a protocol in place if an owner allows an employee to work while infected. And if an owner says, "Hey, I'm sorry you're possibly COVID positive, but I'm shorthanded tonight and I need you," and then that, I think that employer does have a right to sue at that point, or the employee has a right to sue that owner at that point for making them, go to work and possibly infecting many other people. There's just no protocols in place, and that's my issue. I wish that there was, especially for restaurants, a step-by-step plan that says, if this happens,
That's me.
if this happens, you have the option to do this. There's just nothing. We're just kind of flying by the seat of our pants on everything and doing the best that we can to keep ourselves and our customers and our staff safe.
And, I know probably the only weird solution to all this would be an executive order for the governor. And I don't see him getting this intensely involved in restaurants. And we, as fellow restaurateurs, suffer the brunt of this. I literally had another restaurateur on May Avenue that I know really well tell me to shut up and stop talking about masks. It's affecting business. And I said, dude, eventually, if these people all die, we don't have a business anyway. What does the short term matter on this whole thing? I mean, how do we not choose to do the right thing? Chelsea, I think you'd be shocked at the lack of scruples that we too are running up against with our fellow restaurateurs. It's shocking.
Yeah, I think that you both hit on a lot of core issues that we're experiencing right now. And Kathy, to go back to what you were talking about with the testing, that's been something that we have been dropping the ball on since day one. Not only have we struggled to have the reagents that we need, but to have the right reagents with the right tests, having false positives. The New York Times came out with something just the other day talking about how the number of tests we're reporting are 2 to, I think, 13 times lower than the actual numbers from the CDC. And
Right.
so we have, a lot of those issues happening. A lot of people who are asymptomatic don't have fever. So even if you kind of scanned them at the door before they came in, that's not a sure way. A lot of people that have it they're still coming back with tests or with negatives, depending on what time within the infection they're getting tested. So we have a lot of issues there, and we've been working, hard to try to get those resolved, but we're coming up kind of against a brick wall there as well. And in terms of the reporting at the beginning, and I think these may still be up, we did have some emails that you could report at least to OESC to report if something on the employer or the employee side was not coming up well. But you're right, we don't really have any reporting mechanisms for test positives for employers or employees. And there's not a whole lot of protection there for people to send people home. Some of the restaurants that we saw towards the beginning would let go all of their staff, and then they applied for, PUA. But it's really unclear at this time whether if you let a staff go now because they tested positive and were going to be off work for 2 weeks, if they could apply and be eligible for PUA, or if you would have any ramifications as well. And so I think there's a lot of ambiguity that we just have not addressed and aren't working through. And so it's really good to hear from you all of what that's looking like on your end, because that helps me and others be able to advocate for some of those things, because we know that testing isn't great. We know that there are issues out there, but being able to see what that looks like playing out is very helpful.
Yeah,